Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so delighted to be joined by Dr. Lekan Ajayi. Lekan, welcome. Congratulations on being nominated and receiving Oncology Hero of the Month for March. We're so delighted and so excited to speak to you today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. And what a great honor. I am really delighted to be here.
Now, a lot of folks know you as Dr. Ajayi. A lot of us know you as Lekan. Can you give us a little bit of your background, a little bit of your early life and how you may have gotten into oncology and where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally I'm from Nigeria. Moved here in 2003. That seems like forever ago. And came here actually to study pharmacy at the University of Wyoming. And so I was at the University of Wyoming for 6 years, where I finished my PharmD degree, and on there went on to work in different hospitals within Wyoming and as a pharmacist. And then from there, I discovered my passion with oncology and, advanced in my career within oncology from then on. And I just joined Highlands Oncology Group a little bit over 3 years ago. So currently my role at Highlands is the Chief Operating Officer of Highlands. And it's definitely been a very rewarding position to be in.
That's wonderful. Lekan, in your answer, you said that you kind of discovered your passion, that you were serving in another capacity, perhaps in pharmacy and whatnot. Was there a moment that it did become very crystal clear that, hey, this is the path that I want to go on in oncology?
Yeah, a lot of times when you do your job within oncology, one of the things I love about oncology is this. The patients who come here to receive care, you establish a very long-term relationship with them, right? So it's not like having a cough or a cold or seeing your primary care doctor where, you just go in, it's just one episode and see you next year, right? Mm-hmm. Typically, when a patient is a cancer patient, what happens is they tend to stay with you longer, and then you tend to see the humanity of cancer through that. Mm-hmm. It's a really rewarding experience when you know that you're making an impact. So I'll give you a quick example. So there was once I was working as a pharmacist, and there was a patient who had just been switched to oral therapy, and insurance was we couldn't get the therapy approved through insurance, and he was a late stage melanoma patient. Mm-hmm. And so I just went about doing my job, trying to make sure that the prescription was covered. I made multiple calls to make sure that we got assistance for him. We were able to get the medication for him, and that was it, right? From my standpoint, I was like, great. I've done my job. Until a few years later, when I saw him, I actually had not recognized him, and he came up to me and he said, do you realize that you're my best friend? And I said, no. And he said, it's because of the effort that you made that I believe I'm alive today. Mm-hmm. And what I just thought was very, not really consequential, it's just going about doing your job, really translated to this huge impact in a patient's life, right? Mm-hmm. So when you look at that, then you start to see that working in oncology is more of a calling. It's not a job. Because you're taking care of patients in a very, very convoluted system, and patients who honestly are just not, they're thinking about how am I going to make it, how am I going to survive, right? How am I going to get the medications that I need? And so that's how I found my calling in oncology.
Yeah, I guess you literally came face to face with the decisions that you made and the impact that you had in that one kind of chance encounter. It really kind of turned something that might have been transactional into something that felt more like a mission for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more you're able to have those impacts with your patient, um, it, it's it just becomes a lot more rewarding, right?
Hmm.
As a career.
So I think it's fair to say you're a veteran of oncology now. I mean, you've served in multiple roles, whether it be inside a practice there at Highlands Oncology Group, or even as past president of the ACCC, the Association of Cancer Care Centers. So you've seen a broad view of oncology as a multidiscipline kind of approach. What have you noticed as far as barriers to innovation? Like what are those barriers that maybe you've noticed? Because I ask because Highlands Oncology Group is it seems to me to be a very forward-thinking organization. What were the barriers that you may have seen elsewhere, and how are you addressing them even in your own role at Highlands?
Yeah. So, when I think about innovation, I think about two things. I think about the actual technology or the process improvement or whatever it is that you want to put into place that is innovative. But then I also look at the people that it's going to be really interacting with, right? And so a lot of times when we think about innovation, there's a lot of emphasis on either the technology, and we forget about the people aspect of things, right? And so a lot of my passion has been, how do we get people ready for the innovation? And so when I was president at the Association of Cancer Care Centers, my focus was on upskilling the workforce and getting people ready for innovation, because that's more than half of the equation that you need.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of doing that, a lot of what I see as barriers to innovation is the permission to try new things and the permission to know that there's some things you're going to fail at, right? And then that's okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, a lot of what I've worked with my staff here at Highlands is, I want you to think about trying new things, because we have to find ways to improve our work, right? And so that's a huge leadership deal, where leaders have to be okay with giving a sense of autonomy to their employees within a controlled environment, right? And giving them the permission to try to be innovative, to learn the lessons from their mistakes, right? And to celebrate their wins. I see that as a huge barrier in healthcare. In healthcare, we're always afraid someone's going to sue us, or we're going to make some mistake. That's going to have a huge ramification. And so I think it's ingrained in the psyche of people that, we've always done this way. It's worked. We've never had any issues. Let's continue doing it that way, right? Spreading innovation means that you have to embrace a different way of thinking, and that's a leadership-led initiative, right? As a leader, you have to do that, and you have to lead that with your people and your employees. Another barrier to innovation that I see is that we don't invest the resources to get the right people in the right place, specifically in healthcare. And I give the example that, most of the positions that I took beyond being a pharmacist, you had to learn on the job, right? So, you see somebody who is a great pharmacist and you're like, oh yeah, let's promote this person to a manager. Well, the skills that you need to manage people is different than the skills that you need to be a good pharmacist, right? And so learning to prepare our people for the positions that we want them to fill is really, really important and key. And I think a lot of times as leaders, we're moving 100 miles an hour, and we at times forget to do these things.
Those are such great points. And I wonder, just to go back for a moment, you were talking about Giving yourself and your team permission to fail, was that mindset developed largely in your early life? Was there a role model that taught you, or was that
Yes.
just a part of your experience? What informed that kind of sensibility, which I think is absolutely right?
Yeah. So I learned that when I was a manager. I realized very quickly when I became a manager that I got promoted into management because, you know, I was a good pharmacist, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when I got in there, I had to struggle a little bit with what it really meant to manage people. And
Mm,
so I remember in my former organization, Shared Memorial Hospital, we were going through a lean transformation at that time. And I remember as a young manager, the lean coach looked at me and said, "How can you tell whether you're winning or losing every day?" I could not answer that question.
yeah,
I had to give, the whole, well, we're taking care of patients. But within me, I knew that, okay, I had some work to do, right? And so it became this journey through some really great coaches that I had. We had these coaches from Simpler, and they worked with my former organization. And I learned so much about management and managing people and creating a system to engage people
mm,
and creating systems to measure people's work. And at what level are you measuring that work? And how do you communicate that to people? How
mm,
do you help that rally people around a common cause? And more importantly, how do you use that to give people a sense of control over the work that they're doing, that they know
yeah.
they can improve it, and they can report to it, and they feel safe psychologically doing that, right? And so that was a journey that I learned when I was a manager, and I had some excellent coaches who taught me through that process. And it's really helped me to be who I am today
Yeah.
professionally.
That's wonderful. So maybe to double click into that, just another moment. You're our oncology hero of the month, but I'm wondering, to whom do you look as a hero? I mean, who are those people in your life, professionally, of course, or personally, that you feel like have taught you something truly impactful about what it means to deliver compassionate care, maybe to cancer patients? Or have there been, one or two people that have had a profound impact in your life? And would you share maybe one or two of
Yeah,
those with us?
yeah.
Or
I've got many of those in my life who really have been true heroes. There's a lady, again, I go back to my lean days. There's a lady by the name Paula Rowe, who was my lean coach. She was a nurse by training, but she also had experiences in Toyota. And she truly taught me how to connect a mindset of improvement with driving culture in your organization.
yeah.
And she really taught me, that culture is better than strategy.
Mm,
Like if you have a culture that's great, where people are, it's an army of people trying to make your organization great, rather than a handful of people coming up with a strategy, right?
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
she taught me, first, work on improving the culture within your organization. And then the strategies that you implement will not only succeed better, but they're going to have a much more lasting effect and
Mm,
impact in your organization. So she's definitely one of the people I think as one of my heroes. Also here at Highlands Oncology, I think I've had just the opportunity to interact with some really, really cool people, specifically, those who helped actually found this organization and build it to what it is today. And, I think of people like, Dr. Beck, who is our, um, one of our senior founding partners here and our medical director for our research department, has really, taught me a lot, along with Dr. Bradford too, who was the initial one of the initial founders in here, on how to really develop a, a business around caring for people. right? And so
Yeah.
it's not about the dollars and the cents, right? It's about really going with a mission to take care of people. And when you really truly do that, everything else follows, right?
Yeah.
So that, that's great. And also, I also have to give a shout out to Jeff, our CEO here, who I think is a really, really, great CEO, as well as a colleague, who actually gives me the freedom, you
Yeah.
know, to be able to do all these things. And so, those are the people who have really made a huge impact in my life professionally.
I think that's remarkable, and I just think of like that nurse. If she were to see you today as a chief operating officer, and the impact that you have in people's lives, and I've been blessed to really I've heard you speak at ACCC, and so that compassion and concern and professionalism comes through. It's not it's compassion with organization. It's compassion with intentionality, and I think she'd be really proud of you. I'm sure if she were to see you where you are today, I know that would mean a lot to her to know how much he impacted your
Oh,
thinking
thank
early
you.
on in your life. Yeah. What are your thoughts? Artificial intelligence, automation, or we talk about innovation. Do you think they have a role to continue to play in innovating oncology? What are
Absolutely.
your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. I think we're actually at a crossroad now where these technologies are really ripe to make an impact on how we take care of our patients, right? I think it's always going to be a journey in really integrating these tools into how we work, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of
Yeah.
people think that AI is going to come in here and just take over everything. My experience has been not really that it's taking over everything, but it's wrapping itself around people and how they work to make them better. I
Hmm.
usually give the analogy of there's a commercial that I watch at times that really cracks me up for insurance, where there's this guy in a car and he's driving down the road, and he really thinks he's a better driver than he is, but he really isn't. But it's all these, you know, automations in the car that are working, behind the scenes, that are making him actually, you know, look better as a driver than he is, right?
Right.
I think AI has the opportunity to make us that, right? So think about, decision support tools, and AI really assisted with that, right? It just augments what the clinician does,
Yeah.
and it gives you the ability to see, to be able to process more things at a higher level. And I think that's the problem with healthcare. We're so burdened by, the tasky things, that it's very difficult to operate at a higher level. And I think innately everybody signed up for operating at that higher level, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where we see the dissonance and the burnout, because you're doing all these things that are not making you live to your full potential, and
Yeah.
it, right? So
Yeah.
AI has the ability to unlock that. It already is doing that, and I think it's going to keep doing that moving forward.
Listen, one final question, and that's this. Potentially watching this video will be a young professional that's thinking about getting into oncology, or they're starting their career in oncology. Is there one bit of advice that you would give those that are seeking to either enter or continue into the field of oncology? Anything that you'd learned that you'd like to pass on?
To those who are about to get into oncology, the advice I have is maybe a little bit different than those who already are in oncology. Two things that come to mind. The first thing is you've got to be passionate about what you want to do. You have to see it more than a job. It's got to be a calling. And
Yeah.
let me tell you why. There was a guy who once said, you know, what you need from your employees at times is not their 100%, it's their 110%.
Mm.
Okay. And the 10% comes with, the passion, the connection, the sense of mission and purpose, right? And I think being able to connect with that is highly important if you want to make a difference long term. right?
Yeah.
Having said that, I think one other thing I would say is making sure that you have principles that guide you in that regard, right?
Yeah.
That helps you with your decision making and looking at things from that
Right.
perspective. Yeah, I think that really, on the long run, is going to help make you the best in the field, right?
Yeah.
And for those who are already in there, who are aspiring for something else, there might be some people who may be aspiring for, leadership in oncology or. What I usually tell people is make sure you're prepared for where you're going. Okay. There was a lady once who was a fantastic employee of mine, and we're talking about succession planning, and we're talking about her next move. And she looked at me and she said, "I don't want to make the move if I'm not ready." Okay. And now that really hit me, because a lot of times you're aspiring for that next position,
Yeah.
but you don't really take time to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And there's this, balance between your competence, right, and the demands of the job, right? So if you're competent to be in that job because you've prepared very well, then what you see is a lot of performance and engagement and fulfillment, right? But if it's the other way around, then it's a lot of stress, and so, a lot of what I will say is, for those who are in there, double down and make sure that you are prepared in wherever you want to go, right?
Yeah.
And also to make sure that you have that sense of passion and calling that's really driving you to be there.
I think that's wonderful. And I think it echoes what you said before, which is it's not enough just to have strategy. You have to have culture. It's not enough just to have passion. You have to have a framework to make decisions that is just and bears good outcomes. And I think that's really powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lekan Ajayi, our Oncology Hero of the Month. Lekan, it's been a delight to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations again on being honored as the Oncology Hero of the Month.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor. And you guys at Azra AI do good work, and I'm just excited to be part of it.